At the end of the day, everybody wants to feel heard. They need to feel appreciated. They want to feel affirmed. They want to feel like they matter. And not only will it change how the person responds to you, it's going to change how you feel about yourself and how you see yourself. If there's any way, I'm so passionate about this. It's like if you really want to change your life, you got to start with these little things. And I think there's nothing bigger than effective communication, and that's internal and that's external.
Yeah.
We're back, and we're talking about effective communication with Christy, the expert on communicating styles.
Well, I'm still mad at you about the last episode with your little toxic.
Shut up! I'm talking.
Your little toxic
Shut up.
ending.
I said you're coming off stupid. Shut up.
It's not even funny. Not even playfully funny.
You can't actually have those kind of jokes until you're like really entrenched in solid communication like we are, right?
You are all jacked up.
We're so expert. I don't know. I feel like I drank a Mountain Dew or a Red Bull, and I don't drink either one of those. So I don't know. Let's just go with it or I trail off.
Oh, right. So we talked about a lot of toxic communication styles in relationships. So now we're going to try to talk about some of those healthy ones.
Yeah, I learned a lot of good tips and tricks and tools now to use. Push your buttons.
Thank God you pushed back and got rid of some of those toxic ways before you met me.
They weren't toxic. They were useful tools to get my way.
You had a lot of polishing up to be done
Man,
before you made your way to me.
I told you 7 years, and I'm still working on it.
No, and all the years with your ex-wife whipping you into shape.
I don't know about that, but we'll go with it. I felt like there was one other thing that we were going to talk about that we might have missed last time, but
Related to toxic, or
yeah.
Well, we're over that. Move along,
No,
Sargent.
We're not toxic anymore.
Yeah,
okay,
we're not toxic anymore.
Mm-hmm. So tell me and tell the world, what do I do right? Do I do anything right?
Oh my gosh. I'm exhausted and you're so exhilarated with all this talking.
I'm like
on that note, we can start off with different communication styles and different love languages and how it's important to respect that and understand that. Creates a more healthy communication environment for your relationship if you're aware of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different personality profiles and tests you can take online, and some are free or some are paid for. But again, this isn't a promo for that. But I do recommend people, you Google search personality profiles, and there's a number of good ones. There's the DISC profile, which is DISC, stands for something. There's other ones that I'm a fan of, is where they take in, you take this, they're all questionnaires, right? So you take these questionnaires, and through this algorithm and other data, they're able to kind of help you figure out kind of what personality profile you land in. And the one I took a number of times, there were like 16 different combinations, if you will, that help you understand how you show up.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand your own communication style as well as your partner's.
Absolutely. And it really sets you up for success. And we use this a lot in team development, but the same can be applied certainly in a relationship. So I know I am a ENFP, so it's extrovert, intuitive, feeler, perceiver.
I've taken this test, but I do not recall what I am because my short-term memory sucks.
You're a forgetter, never remember. No, I don't know.
Exactly.
What it is, right? Yeah.
But we have a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences too. But we don't let that hinder our communication style. I think we do a really good job of respecting how each other process information and when we communicate about hard things. You've really taught me how to accept that it's okay that I process things differently from you or may receive things differently, as long as we're open and communicating about what we're hearing. That has been so helpful in this relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And I know one of the things we did early on, we took some of these personality profiles, right? And not only are they interesting and they kind of give you be introspective and help you understand, but I think it's key. So I would tell anybody, if we're talking about healthy communication styles, especially if you didn't grow up in an environment where you practiced healthy communication styles, you had family, if it was a discipline, and most of us haven't, you got to understand yourself and how you show up first before you can ever expect someone else to understand you and how you're going to have healthy communication. So while these aren't the end all be all, they're a really good starting block.
Absolutely.
To do that, right? So I know for me, like I'm empathetic, I'm intuitive, I'm feeler. Get ready. This is going to be a shock. I like to talk.
What?
I know, it's crazy.
Not
I know.
you.
Sit down. I know you're going to faint here, but I get out. Like I have to get everything out, throw the metaphors or the analogies, throw everything up against the wall, see what sticks. I always feel things way before I can articulate them. And so before I never really understood that. And so it would come out in my body language. It would come out in my actions. It would come out very frustrating to people and combobulated because I was certainly communicating something in a non-verbal way, but I didn't know how to put them in the words. And so the other person didn't. So to be fair, it still can create a lot of frustration people I'm communicating with. Certainly you, or even in a business situation. But I've learned that's how I show up. So I try to not, I try to get my words around my feelings so I can actually have a conversation. Otherwise people are like,
and you have a lot of words.
Hell? My dictionary is extra big.
Can I get a word in? Can I say something? I'm teasing. I'm much quieter, as I'm sure most people have gathered by now. And you've helped me in that aspect to try to communicate verbally and get things out. I'm definitely a feeler, and I have to process. It takes me a lot longer to process and to put those feelings to words. But in a relationship, I know that you need that verbal communication, and you like to throw everything out in the very beginning. So in that aspect, it's a little uncomfortable for me, but I've learned to give that. And you've met me halfway. You've learned to kind of back off and let me process and come back to the table once I have my thoughts together. So I think it's very healthy part of our relationship that we do that for one another.
I agree. It's very hard for me to operate successfully that way. That's a learned discipline. I think personality profiles, you and I are, although we're not different, like we're very compatible and we're not opposites. We're very similar, but the way we show up in our communication styles is very different. And I think we're about as far different as you can be. I want to approach the conversation, the issue, especially if there's a conflict resolution or something we need to resolve, and I want to fix it. I want to deal with it now. I want to get it all out on the table. I want to look at all of it, all the cards, figure out what fits, what doesn't fit. I want to fix it. I want to fix it right now. And I want to, two things. One, I want to walk away with us like, yeah, we really nailed it. And then also, because of that, I'm really energized. So that whole process energizes me. The more I get into it, the more energized I get, which is diametrically opposite from you.
I'm like really slowed down after a very intense conversation for sure. Yeah. And then a lot of times I'll have feelings and I can't quite put a word or like what's going on until I really stop and reflect what's bothering me, what's making me feel agitated. So, and I know that drives you crazy that you'll be like, is something wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to really reach in and pull that out of what's going on.
Yeah, I think at the end of sessions like that with us, you're kind of like those scrubbing bubbles, just go down the drain.
Yeah, I'm definitely down the drain. You're still the little happy bubble up on the edge of the tub, like,
right.
yoo-hoo.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, all right, so what's next? What do you want to do? You want to play a game? You want to cook
And
some
I'm
dinner?
like,
And you're
I
like,
need a
leave
nap.
me the F alone. I
Yeah,
just need
I need a nap.
Yeah.
But it always does feel so much better and healthy to get it out and to take care of it when there's an issue.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if this all stems from. I mean, certainly part of it's my personality. That's the way I'm wired. But I also feel like some of that was learned behavior in my home life growing up because it was dysfunctional. I was the peacemaker. I felt like I was the peacemaker. I always wanted there to be harmony, and I was certainly empathetic, and didn't like that strife and that fear because it really just I don't say immobilized me, but it shut me down. So I was always trying to be the facilitator, the peacemaker. So I learned these traits of trying to like deal with things. The quicker I could deal with it or help to deal with it and get it solved, the better I felt. So it was all about me.
That's healthy, and that you communicate that with me, and so I have empathy for you, and therefore I want to give you a little bit and like sit down and have these difficult conversations. Meet you halfway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to change your communication style for the other person, but when you understand where they're coming from, I think you need to sit down and learn and understand where they're coming from.
Yep, and the sooner you can do that, especially again, we're always talking about a relationship, and at some point every relationship is new and it starts out. So the quicker you can put these building blocks into play, the better off, the more successful you're going to be. So like with you and having this, our relationship like we have, and it's easy and it feels safe. So it's okay for me to learn. And I'll tell you, I've learned so much and how to be a better communicator by the way you show up, because you need to pull away. And so and that's been really beneficial, not just in my relationship with you, but also in my business dealings. And because there's people there that need to, like, I have a partnership group with a few people that are global, and we all show up differently. And so we don't get a lot of time to have face-to-face conversation. A lot of it's over, online platforms where we're sharing information. Occasionally we get on like a web meeting or something where we can actually have some visual. We're all very different. There's one guy on my team that he's the same way. I mean, he's analytical. He has to have all his I's dotted and T's crossed, and he needs to take the information and walk away and come back and then bring his insight. And that can be frustrating for me because I want to have an answer now. But
oh yeah, these topics definitely bleed over into all relationships, really. Mm-hmm. All these different little tips or whatever you want to call them that we talk about.
Yeah, and when you come back after having thought about it, I mean, 99% of the time, there's tremendous insight, and you're able to bring perspective that you may not necessarily have in the moment or emotion. So I've not only become better communicating with you, but it's also enriched me and taught me a lot of skill sets. And waiting, again, that whole saying that perspective is value at distance. You step away from something long enough, you get a better perspective.
Yeah.
And reset.
And I think another thing we do that's very healthy is we really listen to each other, actively listen to understand where the other person's coming from. Shut up. Yes. Yes. I think we're really good at that. And I think that's another reason that our that we're so happy in this relationship.
How's that? Do you think that was a natural trait for you? This is a big one.
Listening? You don't think I listen?
No, I'm not. I'm going to reap the
Can you
reap the
rephrase
whirlwind
that?
after this one.
I'm
No, what I
teasing.
mean is that a natural part of you? Do like when we talk, do you feel like you really key into what I'm saying and take it in?
I try to. I mean, I may not have been so much of a great listener when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Like I said, in certain disagreements or whatever, I think I got very defensive very quickly because I felt like the blame was always on me. There's another defensive comment, but that was how I felt. And so I think listening and actively listening and not being defensive was definitely something I had to work on.
That skill set is, I think, one of the most difficult skill sets to master. I think it's harder than speaking in public. I think it's harder than doing a lot of things, is actively listening. It takes a lot of focus and concentration, especially when you're engaged in the conversation, because most times we're thinking about what we want to say next or say in response.
Mm-hmm.
But if try it sometime. I would tell anybody, try this sometime. Get in a conversation could be, with your significant other, your child, parent, doesn't matter, and say, all right, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to listen. See how hard it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And repeat
it's difficult.
back what you've heard of it. I joke a lot because you'll say something and I'll say, well, what I heard was, because it goes through that other person's filter sometimes, and they may not be on the same page as you. So I think it's important to repeat back and make sure you're hearing what that person is wanting you to hear.
So what I heard you say was, I think that's a key, and that's a good segue into how to make sure you're on track in a conversation, is to, again, listen, and then when that person is done or it's your turn to speak, that's a great way to enter and say, what I heard you say is this, and then repeat it back to them. And I'll tell you, I've done that with you and with other people, and there's been as many times where I've been right, where they said, yeah, that's what I said, as to, no, that's not what I said at all. Yeah. Now, that may have been the words that they said, but it isn't what they intended to say, because there was a lot of emotion in that. So by having that reflection or confirmation, it'd be like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. Oh, what did you mean? And then you can actually get to the root of the problem, or the root of what they were trying to say. And that's a huge skill.
Yeah. And then you open yourself up and you're more vulnerable. It helps build trust. Mm-hmm. It makes the relationship so much better.
Yeah, at every step of the way. So we think, always thinking about how you're going to show up, communicate. And we communicate. That's all we do all along. Either we're communicating externally with somebody, or we're communicating with ourselves internally. We're always having conversations, internally or externally. We were talking off camera here a little bit with our studio engineer, and just kind of laughing about some of the ways we show up communicating, and they brought up a really great point that we we all do. And again, it's not gender specific, although we kind of laugh, but it's like, what does the person need when you show up in a conversation, communication? What's the person need? What are they asking for? Is it, and we'll do this, like you come to me with a frustration, whether it was work or a coworker or whatever.
Yeah, I've come to you and I don't want to hear your advice or what I should be doing or that. I just want you to be there to listen. We've definitely had those scenarios.
Yeah, well, you'll start talking about something I can tell is visibly bothering you, weighing on you, and of course, what I want to do, I want to fix it. I'm going to give you, I'm going to either want to fix it myself or give you advice, or, and boom, all right, got it, we fixed it, yay. And oftentimes that's not what you need. And I think and again, I don't want to make this gender specific, I think oftentimes, and to our studio engineer's point, men oftentimes, they just want to fix it. We're almost programmed to fix it, to deal with it, to protect. And it's not because we think we have all the answers. Oftentimes we feel it's our job to protect and to nurture, and to take the lead from the front, and to take the bullets and do all that. And I've done that in my own relationship, and you walk away and the other person feels unheard.
Yeah, unheard, frustrated. I just wanted you to listen. You're not hearing me, so they may shut down. And then you're falling back into those toxic relationship communication styles. So it's important to be very upfront and say what you need in each interaction.
Agreed. And both people in this case can take ownership, or they can take ownership in that. So the person who wants to be heard or has the need should be able to say, hey, I want to talk about this. This is what I need. And it almost feels a little bit like planned, but it saves a lot of heartache. And then the other person who you've come to needs to be able to say, all right, hey, what do you need from me here? Do you just need me to listen? Do you need me to fix it? Do you need me to, to go handle the situation? Like, what do you need from me? It's okay if you just want to talk and you need for me to be empathetic.
Yeah. You can't assume somebody knows what you're wanting out of the interaction.
We used to do this exercise and some team building with our group, and I thought it was really profound. And it helps. It teaches you a lot of things. Like, we would have to go around. So say there's 10 people in a group. Each person would take a turn. So you'd pick one person, and each person went around and said one thing about that person that they really admired or liked. A trait, attribute, doesn't matter. And the only thing that you could say, if you were the person they were talking about, the only thing you could say is thank you. You just had to listen. And then after that, then you'd have to go around with the same person. You just say one thing that either you didn't like about it. It couldn't be anything personal. It couldn't be like a dig, but it was something that an attribute that they could work on or something. And again, you had to just be able to say.
That's a hard one.
Oh,
because
man.
you want to defend yourself.
Absolutely. It's brutal. You have to say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Because it did feel sometimes like a whipping. But you learned a few things. One, you needed to hear what the other person had to say. You needed to listen and be introspective. And so I would say that's a great skill to do even in a family dynamic, or it doesn't have to always be in a business setting.
Right.
Like, how do I help? How can I listen better, and how can I take points from other people? I may be segueing a little off to another topic, but
yeah, I think I zoned out for a second.
We're talking about effective communication and listening, and I don't feel heard right now.
Sorry, because you got off subject. What I was going to say is that segues well into never make your feelings about the other person. Like, and you've helped teach me this, and I've even noticed this when you're communicating something. You'll say, "Well, I feel," and you're not like, you did this and you made me feel this way. Like, you take ownership of your own feelings and you don't place it on me. And it's very non-threatening, and it's a good way to communicate in a very non-threatening way.
Yeah, because it doesn't automatically set the person up to be defensive.
Right.
So pick an example. It could be where I may have a habit of talking a lot. There's a good example. And you may zone me out or whatever, or make me do something that isn't different, whatever. And I could say, why you never listen to me. You never hear anything I have to say. Every time I think I say something important, I don't feel validated, or you minimize it, whatever. And then what's that do? It automatically makes you go.
Right.
This is just an example, but it makes you go on the defensive, and you
can't actively listen because you're ready
right.
to defend yourself, and you're thinking up your arsenal of how am I going to defend this threat against me.
Yep, and then the conversation is kind of doomed from the beginning, as opposed to, hey, when I'm talking and you pick up your phone, I feel like I'm not being heard. There's a difference there, because then it's hey, this is my experience. I'm not saying anything's wrong with you. This is my experience, and that's the whole overarching. So the more that we can say, hey, this is the experience I'm having when I'm interacting with you. One, they can't argue it because it's your experience.
Right. You that's another toxic. Not that we're going back to toxic, but you don't want to invalidate someone else's feelings. Mm-hmm. That's their feeling.
Boy, how many times does that happen, right? Where you say something and the other person's like, no, or
like, you don't have the right to feel that way.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's crazy.
It's your experience.
Yeah.
We do this a lot with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we think, well, because whatever, they're younger, or they don't have the insight, they don't have the life experience. And then we either don't listen to them, we minimize, or we invalidate them. Tell you what, you talk about setting a kid up for failure by doing that, as opposed to saying, all right, hey, they might only be 7, but they're having an experience. Now, their experience may not be rooted in rationality or all the information, but it's still their experience. And the more you can meet them in that place, and again, it doesn't have to be a kid, it could be a significant other, it doesn't matter. The more you can meet them where they're at, validate their experience that they're having, have a conversation around the experience and how you're showing up in it. That's, I mean, you're 90% of the way there, right?
Yeah.
To an effective resolution, effective communication, effective conflict resolution if there's a conflict. And then all these little building blocks just make that wall. That's a bad analogy, but just help make for a better, a more solid relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really key. And boy, there's so many just different little attributes and innuendos that are said and made that tear down. So what advice would you give people when they're saying, boy, that, I hear what you're saying, this is good stuff, but it's a lot. So where do I start? At the beginning, as Dorothy said. Or maybe that was the good witch Glenda said that. It's always good to start at the beginning.
Oh yeah, when she the yellow brick road.
Oh, the yellow brick road. I'm really not
you're
on it.
You're getting my brain off thought here.
I'm really not on anything.
Oh, okay, what was the question? I'm zoning out.
Well, people say, hey, this is a lot, and I feel like it's overwhelming, and yeah, I've got a lot of things I got to work on, but there's a lot of things I need from this other person in my life. Where do I start? How do I start making a change in communication? What would you?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is start communicating. Take the time to sit down. You brought up a good point, that something we try to do every night when we go to bed. We put the cell phones down, focus on each other, have a conversation about us, how our day was. I think it's very important to keep that connection and keep the lines of communication open. Create that safe space for your partner that they can come to you and talk about things that may be uncomfortable or a little bit difficult. And listen. Otherwise, they're going to quit coming to you and talking to you and being open to you. And then that's when that whole bundle of yarn that you talked about in the other episode kind of starts building up if you don't have those lines of communication open.
Yeah, because it's like toothpaste. You squeeze it, it's going to come out one or the other. Same with communication. If you don't have that person that's in your life that's supposed to be that person you go to, it's gonna flow out to somebody else.
Yeah,
and nothing good ever comes of that.
Right, and use some of the things we talked about that keep a healthy communication line open. Stay away from those toxic things, the blaming, the defensiveness. And I think you can avoid a lot of conflict just by being honest and open and listening.
Yeah, and being self-aware. So when you're in a conversation, whether it's passing or it's an actual, you sit down and really want to talk about something of importance, be really intuitive and self-aware of the energy and the feelings. So if the conversation is feeling difficult or if it's feeling anything but good and loving and uplifting, if it's not feeling that way, stop, because there's an issue. And so try to understand. Maybe that just means you just both have to walk away for a minute.
Yeah.
But don't walk away thinking, man, what the hell is wrong with that person? Why can't they hear me? Walk away and say, okay, how can I approach this differently? And the answer is probably going to be different every time depending on the topic.
Yeah, because we're not, nobody's perfect. Our relationship isn't perfect. We have to constantly work at these skills and communication in order to keep it healthy. It's a constant work in progress.
Mm-hmm. And just like, foreplay begins in the kitchen or the closet or the garage, good communication begins in the little things. Mm-hmm. Like I get a lot of times where people get up in the morning, they get up different schedules, usually mornings, especially on a work week, things are pretty busy. Getting ready for work, got to get out the door, you might have kids, you might have pets, whatever. That isn't necessarily always the best time to try to connect. Although, if you can, try to connect for a few minutes, whether it's over breakfast or coffee or whatever.
Or that nonverbal communication you were talking about, those little acts of kindness, how you would pack my lunch for me if I, scrambling around during my 20-minute routine to get ready. I didn't have a second to spare, or warming my car up, scraping the frost off. We weren't actively communicating, but those were loving ways to communicate your care for me.
Yeah, and you did the same for me. And all these, you would always take a couple seconds before we walk out the door, and just even a kiss. But it's like, hey, have a great day. It doesn't take much, but it's those little things, right, that build up that make things stronger. I guess my point was, most people do have time in the evening, unless you're on a business trip or something. You're physically separated, but if you don't feel like you have that time in the morning, you definitely have time in the evening. Does that mean turning the television off, your favorite show off for a few minutes, shutting it down, putting the phone down, sitting on a couch together, glass of wine, or if you don't, it doesn't matter, facing each other and saying, hey, how was your day? We talk about, that time when you lay down in the bed to go to sleep, set that phone down and say, hey, what are you carrying today? Like, what's one thing that was really good about your day, or what's one thing you're struggling with? Because I'm a big believer, never go to bed angry, and never take your problems to bed, because when you sleep, your mind is working these things out anyway. And you're going to, if you keep thinking negative things going to bed with them, guess what? It's all you're going to experience. So try to make the discipline of going to bed with those positive thoughts, those good things, and 2, 3, 5 minutes at night.
And it keeps those lines of communication open to where it's the norm in your day, and you're not shutting off to each other. What? I don't have nothing else to say.
Yeah, you're right. Those few minutes at the end of the day, I think the more you try to implement it or practice it, it's not hard, but it does take discipline.
Oh, I think it can be hard, though. I think it can be hard for some people. Some people find it really difficult to be vulnerable and honest about. They may feel embarrassed if something's making them feel a certain way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that it's not discipline. Creating a new discipline in that can be difficult. What I mean is, everyone has the ability to do this. It's not like a skill, like somebody's like, I just can't do it.
That's true.
So in the sense that you're saying, it can be hard.
But like you said, the more you do it, and it becomes like just part of your day, part of your natural interactions, that it becomes less difficult.
I would challenge anybody to say, there's all these 30-day challenges out there, right? 30-day diet challenge, 30-day fitness challenge with all this. And those are great. I would say take a 30-day communication challenge. And if you can get your partner to do it with you, even better. But you don't have to have that person. But for 30 days, commit to saying, just pick something. In 30 days, I'm going to intentionally be more aware of what I say and how I say it. Maybe it's the I feel rather than you did this wrong. Or maybe say 30 days, at the end of the day, I'm going to intentionally engage with my partner and say, try to make them feel heard. Say, what is the one thing that really was good about your day? Whatever it is, create that 30-day challenge. And I promise you, in 30 days, if you're consistent with it, you're going to notice a change. Yeah. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. It's okay. It's a discipline, right? Yeah. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But I promise you, and then that 30 days, you get done, great. And take another 30 days and pick something else or extend that.
Then it becomes secondhand.
It is.
And you're doing it all the time in your relationship.
Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel heard. They need to feel appreciated. They want to feel affirmed. They want to feel like they matter. And not only will it change how the person responds to you, it's going to change how you feel about yourself and how you see yourself. If there's any way, I'm so passionate about this. It's like, if you really want to change your life, you got to start with these little things. And I think there's nothing bigger than effective communication, and that's internal and that's external.
Yeah.
So I definitely think this is something we need to visit again. And as we get more people that, hey, reach out to us and say specifically, can you talk about this topic inside effective communication? We should, because like this is
so
the
big.
wrapper around everything, right? This is the foundation by which everything else is built. The rest is just, I don't want to say noise, but the rest is just mechanics. You get the communication right,
Yeah.
boy, life becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And we're still,
and you're on the same page. It makes
Yeah.
so many things so much easier.
and it's a daily thing for us. I mean, we by no means have it
Yeah.
figured out.
You fall into old habits or you're tired. I mean, it takes effort. So
Yeah, I mean,
you
there's
have to put in the effort and nurture the relationship
Right.
all the way through it.
I mean, there's days you fail day after day, and I have to let you know that.
Impossible.
But I have
You're funny.
I have faith in you.
Your sense of humor is not that funny, actually.
I feel like they're getting to be like more and more dad jokes. I used to think myself was funny, but no, I
Lord.
just
You can
get
save that for another podcast that
No.
I will not be involved in.
I just get the rolling in the eyes. So, excellent. Great conversation. I know I even today there's things that I'm going to take away from this conversation. That I
Yeah, it
can
helps keep it in the
step up and
forefront of
do
our
better.
mind. And yeah, you could definitely do better. I'm teasing.
Well done. All right. I love you.
I love you too.